Hi, I'm Jason, and welcome back to Community Design Review, where we look at some of the best cards from this week on the custommagic subreddit. Now, we have no meme cards or shoutouts for this week because you guys really need to step up your game. But we have a delightful top 5 for you today, so let's get right into it. Number 5 for this week is Let Us Pray. 2 and a white for a sorcery with Convoke, and it says search your library for an angel or god creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. My first thought about this card is that flavor-wise, it's definitely a home run. But as far as the mechanics of it, it seems a little narrow. While gods are generally very powerful cards, you only have 35 of them in existence so far, not including shapeshifters, so it's difficult to imagine a deck where you'd have at least 4 or 5 different types of gods where this would be a really powerful tutor to get the exact card you need. But when I thought about the fact that Magic also has 172 angels, not including shapeshifters, that made the card a lot better in my mind. With that in mind, Let Us Pray can pull over 200 different cards, not including shapeshifters, from your deck, most all of which will be a big threat and can be good in different scenarios. Convoke is an added mechanical bonus and a flavor win, and just overall, once you've thought about it, I think this card would be really good in a god or more likely an angel-centric commander deck. You know, Andrew, the other host of this video series, has said on multiple occasions that he loves the Kaalia commander deck that he has, and I'm sure he would love to try this out in it, because making sure you can get Avacyn out as soon as possible is pretty much game ending. Number 4 for this week is Humble Defiance, 2 and a white for an enchantment. As long as you control a 1/1 creature, creatures with power 4 or greater can't attack you or a planeswalker you control. This card is reminiscent of Worship, and it has a really cool design, but it does have that issue of I'm not exactly sure what decks I'd be playing it in. It does seem like it'd be really good with a 1/1 indestructible, because then your opponent's big creatures can't attack at all, and then you probably have a bunch of cards that make it so your opponent's small creatures don't do anything anyway. Or, you know, you just have a 1/1 indestructible that can block it indefinitely. Cool design for sure. For number 3, we have Soulbot. 1 mana for a 1/1 artifact creature construct, and whenever Soulbot becomes tapped, add colorless. Okay, this card's pretty clever. I think we all know what the name is referencing. Soliton, because if this card has Soliton's untap ability and you have a way to filter mana indefinitely, then you can make infinite mana, and that's just a really sweet combo. No, but seriously, Sol Ring is so good that a lot of people will probably play this really bad version of Sol Ring. I'm not saying it's garbage, I'm just saying it's obviously not Sol Ring. It dies to removal, and the easiest way to tap a creature is to attack with it, but then you get the mana only in your attack phase, which isn't really that helpful for most decks. Now, putting this in a deck specifically designed to tap and untap your creatures could actually make it better than Sol Ring, since Sol Ring is not as easy to untap because it's not a creature. I'm talking like an Amara Soul of the Accord deck, or I had a commander deck built around this card that I'm not going to even try to pronounce, that had a lot to do with tapping and untapping, and Soulbot would fit right into there. Overall, great design. I really like it when we can take pre-existing cards and kind of do a riff on them to make them generally worse, but in a way that you might be able to take advantage of it in a bigger way. And I will say I legitimately don't think that this is a broken card, even though Sol Ring is, because of the downsides I mentioned previously. It still gives you 2 mana for 1 mana, but the hoops you have to jump through to get there I think definitely make it balanced. Speaking of riffing on pre-existing broken cards, we have Mishra's Vault, a land which taps for 2 colorless mana. You can't spend this mana to cast spells. But Jason, Wizards of the Coast from 1994 asks, the 3 mana can only be spent on artifacts. How powerful could artifacts really be? But of course they've also repeated this thought process every single time they make an artifact set. But anyway, we're here to talk about Mishra's Vault. I honestly don't think this card is probably broken. Once you play it, you've essentially lost a land drop for any of your spells, which is of course most of what you're going to be spending mana on, but it is still more mana than the number of lands you've played, which can be really powerful given the right deck. Of course, there are commanders that are mana sinks that would love to get an extra mana even if it's not for spells, and there are actually some filtering cards that would allow you to turn this mana into mana you can cast on spells, but then you also have to put these cards in your deck, which isn't something you really want to do. Overall, it's a land that taps for 2, so I'm sure it's broken, but I'd like to see what could be done with it for sure. And number 1 this week is our second take on the famous board game Clue since we started this series, and that is Murder Mystery, 1 and a black for an enchantment saga. It has a static ability. Clues have tap, guess all the names chosen with Murder Mystery. If all guesses are correct, exile Murder Mystery. This will make more sense once we get into it. First chapter is secretly choose the names of a creature, land, and artifact you control. If you do, destroy target creature. Chapter 2, all players investigate. Chapter 3, you may put Murder Mystery on top of its owner's library. This is a rather complicated card, so let's break it down. Saying you as the player of this card, paying 2 mana to play this enchantment, you must own a creature, a land, and an artifact in order to destroy a creature. Having a land isn't going to be hard, but having a creature and artifact for a 2 mana spell is going to make it pretty hard for this to be played in a control deck. So that's definitely something to note, that this is kind of more of a mid-range card probably. So anyway, you choose a creature, land, and artifact you control, and then you destroy a creature. 2 mana for a sorcery speed murder isn't bad, but you do have to jump through that hoop, so I think it's totally reasonable. The next turn, all players investigate, meaning you're not getting card advantage here because everybody's drawing a card off of their clue when they want to. But then this is where that first line of text comes in. Now everybody has a clue, which means everybody is allowed to tap their clue to guess which 3 permanents you chose, and if they guess correctly, you exile the card, meaning you're not going to get it back, not being able to destroy another creature. Now, this means if you're mono green and only have forests out, 1 creature and 1 artifact, then whoever taps their clue first is going to be able to exile Murder Mystery, meaning you have to have multiple differently named creatures, lands, and or artifacts in order to make it so you have a chance to put this on top of your library at the end of the saga. Assuming people aren't cracking their clues, every time you play this and get to chapter 2, you're going to give them another chance at guessing your combination. In fact, each clue is actually going to give them 2 chances because they're going to get the clue untapped on their turn, going to be able to tap it to guess, and then they're going to untap and be able to tap it again before you put Murder Mystery on top of your library. And just for the sake of argument, if you are playing this in a commander game, say, you're giving each of your opponents an extra clue, which in addition to the fact that you're giving them card advantage overall, you're going to give them 3, actually 6 guesses for each time you play Murder Mystery. So after playing it once or twice, it's going to be pretty near impossible to keep it around. Which brings me to my biggest problem with this card. While it's definitely really cool and flavorful, remembering which combinations have been guessed is going to be a nightmare. Say you even have just 3 creatures, 3 artifacts, and 3 differently named lands. That's still 27 combinations that your opponents are going to have to guess. And once you have more than a couple guesses, it's going to be hard to keep track of those, unless you actually brought the game Clue to sketch out which ones you're guessing. And if you do that, you're basically just playing Shahrazad with Clue instead of another Magic game, which is fine, I guess. And I hesitate to even mention the fact that once you've returned Murder Mystery to the top of your library and play it again, you reset all the combinations that have been guessed previously. So you have to keep going through them over and over. This is one of those cards that I love to see exist, congratulate the person who thought it up, but would never want to play with in a million years because it would be a massive headache. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. We will be back next week with another community design review. Now let's be honest, Clue in Magic is really cool, but Magic in Clue would be terrible. If that ever happens, I'm never playing Mrs. White again, because all of her abilities are probably going to be severely inhibited. You cut her movement in half, she can't accuse on the same turn she enters a room, and instead of starting with a hand of cards, she just, gains 3 life.